Hi, everybody. My name is Lucy Crane, and I am a registered dietitian with the Callaway County Health Department. I've been a registered dietitian for almost 17 years now, and I've worked with the health department since 2017. I have different experiences in the clinical setting, in the retail setting, and the education setting, and then obviously in the community setting. And a couple of months ago, while you guys had a day off of school, I came in and talked to the staff of Fulton Public Schools about just different nutrition tips and nutrition facts. But one of the things I did was we played a little kind of game or guessing game about sugars that were in different drinks that teachers probably have on a regular basis. So that was pretty popular amongst the teachers and amongst the faculty. So since then, I've done a couple of different presentations at the elementary schools. And so I was asked today to also speak to middle school students about the effects of sugars in our diets. And then I took it a step further. So we're also going to talk about, let me see if I can do it myself. There you go. Talk about the different trends in obesity and then the effects of sugar in our diets for middle schoolers. So how this is going to work is I'm going to go over a couple of topics, and then I'm going to have a break, and your teacher is going to stop the video, and you can all talk amongst yourselves. I'll give you some topics to talk about, and then we'll continue on with the video. So let's get started. Okay, so first of all, there are different trends in obesity in our country. The level of obesity in adults has risen over the past 20 years, definitely. If you would look at the amount of kids and adults who were obese or considered overweight or obese 20 years ago, was definitely a lot lower. At this point, 2/3 of adults are either overweight or obese, and that's based on the BMI or body mass index. Obesity trends have risen in school-aged children as well. It is known that overweight kids have a 70% chance of being overweight adults. So right now, 2/3 of adults in the US are overweight or obese. So as we are getting more overweight and obese in our school-age children, what's that going to look like when they turn into adults? It's probably going to be a higher rate than 2/3 of our population. So we're going to take a look at some trends nationwide and then in the specific states, and we're going to look at maybe what affects the overweight and obese population, or the amount of overweight and obesity that's in those different states and different parts of the country. But just some other facts. The trends in obesity are trickling down to school-age children. So again, the amount of adults that are overweight and obese is increasing, but also the amount of kids who are overweight and obese. If you go into the schools now, they look very different. The children look very different than they did 30 years ago and 40 years ago. When both parents are obese and sedentary, the likelihood of a child being obese is 80%. Okay, so it's almost like a guarantee that if the parents are obese, excuse me, and sedentary, that the children are going to fall in that pattern too. And again, as we look at those trends of adults being more obese and overweight, how is that going to affect our school-age children when they become adults? Overweight and obesity can lead to chronic diseases such as diabetes, high cholesterol, and hypertension. So we're not just talking about the aesthetics of being overweight and obese. We're also talking about the health consequences. Healthcare is a huge issue in this country. It has been for the last 10 years or 20 years. Healthcare costs are increasing and they're rising. We're seeing more and more kids having to go on high blood pressure and high cholesterol medicines, when 30 years ago that was a rarity. You know, they were probably in a medical book somewhere, because that just didn't happen. And now we actually had to change some names of diseases, because the demographic is shifting who gets those diseases, and that's diabetes. So it used to be juvenile diabetes and adult onset diabetes. Well, now we call them type 1 and type 2, because there's so many kids getting the adult onset diabetes. Adult onset diabetes used to happen in maybe after you were 50, after you were 60, caused by maybe a sedentary lifestyle, overweight, some different factors. Well, now we're seeing more and more kids get type 2 diabetes. So we don't get to call it adult onset diabetes anymore. We call it type 2. So even the names of some of our disease states are changing, because our lifestyles are changing, and that is leading to more overweight and obesity, which is leading to these chronic diseases. So like I said, we'll take a look at some trends. This is from the CDC website. And so the first slide I'm going to show you is obesity in 2009. So that was 10 years ago. And you can see right smack in the middle there is Missouri. But I want you to also look at the country as a whole. So I don't know how good you are at geography, but you can kind of see what states are not quite as plentiful with the overweight and obese, or obese, I guess this is looking at. And then the states in white have no data, so we can't really look at those too much. But you can see there's definitely, I'll use my cursor here, there's definitely a trend as far as, see that area right there. So I want you to kind of pay attention to that area as we go through the years and see, of course, we kind of navigate towards Missouri because that's where we live, and that's the state that we pay attention to. But I want you to pay attention to the other states over here too. Now these are the states that are have a little bit less rates of obesity, okay? And now we're in 2013, so that was just 6 years ago. Remember in 2009, it was just these states right here that were in the dark blue. 4 years later, still those states, but there's Missouri. We graduated to the 15 to 19%. Now we're on the very end of that. We're on the very low end, we're 15%. But what about these states over here? Those were the ones that were in the light blue before. Now they're just blue, except for that one. Okay, and we can kind of see over here, these states are really, really hard to see. Poor New England. Okay, and then 2015, so two years later, okay, we can still see, now Missouri, we went back to the medium shade of blue, but you can still see this area right here. They seem to get hit the hardest, don't they? They seem to be have those higher numbers of obesity. And then in 2017, we took a big jump, didn't we, as a whole country? So in 2015, we kind of see this area right here. I don't know, Texas didn't have any data, neither did Louisiana, but I'm kind of thinking if they did, they would probably be part of this darker blue section. And then in 2017, kind of that whole southern area is in that dark blue section. So let's see, the one that has the most, Arkansas with 22%. But these states are not far behind there. Okay, so let's go through that one real quick again. So that's 2009, 2013, 2015, 2017. Okay, I want you to kind of notice some trends. Notice overall, whenever I see these slides, it always kind of reminds me of a movie where like a virus is spreading. And truly it is spreading. You know, you can see some states seem to be a little bit more immune than others, but it's definitely taking over our country. Okay, so I'm going to have the teacher stop this presentation right now, and I want you to answer some questions, okay? What are some of that you're seeing nationwide? What are some of the trends? What are some of the reasons for these trends? And what are some reasons that school-age children might be gaining weight overall? Okay, so like I said, have your teacher stop this, and you can answer those questions. Okay, so hopefully you had some really great discussion with that. We're going to go into the sugars linked to obesity. So the World Health Organization, or WHO, recommends a reduced intake of free sugars throughout the life course. In both adults and children, the World Health Organization recommends reducing the intake of free sugars to less than 10% of total intake. And they suggest a further reduction of the intake of free sugars to below 5% of your total energy intake. So people who consume sugary drinks like soda, juice, sugar coffees, sugar sweetened tea, things like that, typically consume about 1 to 2 cans a day or more, and they have 26% greater risk of developing type 2 diabetes than people who rarely have such drinks. Risk are even greater in young adults and in the Asian population. So I get the question a lot of times, does sugar make you have diabetes? Does an excessive sugar make you have diabetes? And the answer is no. However, excessive sugar can make you gain unnecessary weight, and that can lead to diabetes. So, so there's not a direct link between excessive sugar and diabetes, but there's more of an indirect link to that. I hope that makes sense. Okay. So I'm going to have the teacher stop the video here as well, because I want you to kind of focus on some of these questions, because we're going to look at some of the sugars that are in your beverages and your foods. So think about this. How much sugar do you drink, or do you eat? Sorry. And then how much sugar do you drink? Is it too much, too little, or do you think it meets the recommendations? And you can go back to these recommendations as well. A lot of times we underestimate the food, including the amount of sugar that we eat and drink, especially what we drink. When I have people in my office and we go through a food log and everything, 9 times out of 10, they're forgetting the foods or the drinks, because we just think about, okay, it's what we eat that might be causing us to get too much sugar or too much fat or too much whatever in our diet. We don't think about the drinks. But here in a minute, we are going to look at some of our favorite drinks as middle schoolers and go over how much sugar is actually in those beverages. So teachers, if you would stop this and ask these questions and get some discussion going on. Okay, hopefully you had some good discussion about how much sugar you drink and how much sugar you eat. Okay, so we are going to go over 5 different foods, and we are going to match these with the amount of sugar that's in the foods. Okay, so just so you know, and I hope you can see this here. You can see that. I have these sugar cubes. You've probably seen them at the grocery store. They represent 4 grams of sugar, okay? So I'm going to show you pictures of a cupcake, 6 Oreos, a serving of Takis, a snack bag of Doritos, and a cup of Smart Food kettle corn. And I want you to match those with how much sugar you think is in each one of them. Okay, so one has 16 grams, which is this, 4 cubes, okay? One has 17 grams, 4 1/4 cubes. One of them has 20 grams, so 5 cubes. One of them has 40 grams, so 10 cubes. And one of them has 60 grams, 15 cubes. Okay, so I'm going to show you pictures of these foods, and I want you to figure out what food goes with the amount of sugar? Okay, got the cupcake, 6 Oreos, a serving of Takis, snack bag of Doritos, and a cup of kettle corn. Ah. Okay, so here we go again. So what I want you to do again, if you want to write down like cupcake, Oreos, Takis, Doritos, kettle corn, and then put next to each one of those how many grams of carbs or sugar you think is in there. And we're just going with grams of carbs because all carbs break down into sugar. Okay, so I'm going to give you a moment to do that. And so teachers, if you would stop the video or stop the presentation right now and give them some time to write down their answers. Okay, so here's the answers. If you guessed that the cupcake had the 60 grams, you were right. It has 15 of those cubes. The Oreos have 40 grams, so 10 cubes. The Takis have 17 grams. Oh, whoops, 17 grams. That's 4 cubes and a fourth. The Doritos have 4 cubes. And the kettle corn has 20 cubes. Oh, 20 grams, 5 cubes. Were there any surprises? So teachers, you can stop the video at this time and have a discussion about any surprises that they had with those foods. Okay, we're going to do the same thing with the sugars in our drinks. So these are, when I ask middle school teachers, these are the 5 that they came up with that they see you drinking in the hallways and classes and what have you. So there's soda, a full can of Monster drink, hot cocoa, sweetened tea, and Gatorade. So let's see. I have my 15 grams, my 30 grams, 34 grams, 54 grams, and 65 grams. Okay, so I'll show you pictures of them. There's the soda, the Monster drink, and that's for the whole can. Hot chocolate, sweetened tea, and Gatorade, and that's for the whole bottle. Okay. Teachers, if you would stop the presentation at this time and give them some time to write down their guesses, and then we will continue the video whenever they have all their guesses written down. Okay, so if you guessed that the can of soda had the most sugar, you would be correct. So for one of those bottles, there are 65 grams of sugar, and those aren't just from the carbs, that's just from sugar. So that has 65 grams. The Monster drink had about 30 grams. Oh, I'm sorry. No, it didn't. I even read it wrong. It has 54 grams for the whole for the whole can. And if you look here, this is what's deceiving. This is about trip me up too. So this looks fairly innocent, right? But look at the servings per container, and who just drinks a half a can of Monster drink, right? So we have to times that by 2. That's where we get the 54. All right, so that has almost as much as soda. A lot of people don't realize that. The hot cocoa has 16 grams. The sweet tea has 30 grams. And the Gatorade has 34 grams. So, and that's what a lot of people don't realize either, how much sugar is in Gatorade. It's marketed as a sports drink. And so you think like, okay, it's just replenishing my electrolytes and getting me hydrated and all that. But it actually has quite a bit of sugar in it as well. So if you need to replenish those carbohydrates, that's fine, and it's a great drink. But if you don't, probably don't need all of those carbs necessarily. So teachers, if you would stop the presentation again and ask if there were any surprises, anything that the students were kind of shocked about with the amount of sugar that's in some of their beverages, and then we will conclude. Okay, so I hope that this presentation has shed a little light on what's kind of happening in our country with the adult population as well as the school age population as far as overweight and obesity trends. And I hope it shed a little light on how much sugar is in the foods that we eat as well as the beverages that we drink. Maybe this will help you make a little bit healthier choices when it comes to eating and drinking throughout the school day and when you go home and on the weekends and all of those sort of things. So I do appreciate your time today, and I appreciate you participating in this exercise to hopefully get our school-age children healthier, which can make our community healthier as you grow into adulthood. Thanks. Bye.